Hey everybody, this is your tutorial video for day 8, which is Friday, October 12th, if you're still on pace with us. I forgot to say last video, by the time Project 2 gets turned in, you should probably plan to have Project 1 feedback sent back. You don't want 2 in the hopper, but if you do have 2 in the hopper, this is an okay time to do it. Just know that you're going to have to start on giving feedback this weekend and get through both of them this weekend if you can. The feedback on the collages can, of course, be quite quick, and it'll mostly focus on the design reflection and more than anything else, but we'll talk about that kind of thing in staff meeting. This class is all about thinking about objects of study concretely. We had them think about it a little bit last time, and to think about how it would fit with a larger research project. Here they are going out into the world and gathering some possible objects of study, bringing them back and comparing them with each other to figure out which are the most plausible, interesting objects to base a study around. So the way this all works, start out with some free write questions that are directly in response to the video they watched last time, the theory versus thesis video. You'll see these there, and it's basically asking them to better understand that they aren't writing a thesis paper for this, that the work that they're doing needs to be about questions and exploring questions. That's the fundamental difference between this and what they've done in most of their English classes in the past. So that free write is a good place to cue them into that and get them grounded in that pretty well. You can hear back a few of their answers to these questions, you've got the time, and even to ask them what they thought of the video, whether it was new information, whether it was stuff they already knew before. You can get into it a few different ways, but it might be a nice time to ask about how they felt about the video, whether they liked it. After that is the scavenger hunt. There's a worksheet on Canvas for you that gives them some things to look out for in their scavenger hunt. The idea here is that we're trying to help them understand how to find a topic that's related to writing that they're interested in, and how to find documents or evidence that they could look at to talk about that topic. So they can work in groups or individuals. Here you can decide for yourself what makes the most sense. Read through the focuses that are listed on that worksheet. Let me pull them up in front of me so that I can. There we go. Object of study scavenger hunt. It lays out the sort of key terms for them to think about, things like you might do a project about literacy, or a project about rhetoric, or a project about multimodality, or a project about composition and design, or a project about genre, and it gives some examples of what kinds of projects would fit within those categories. And then for the actual worksheet part of it, it asks them to find different kinds of texts. Find a multimodal text that incorporates at least 4 modes of communication. And it explains earlier sort of what a mode of communication breaks down to. Find a location where students get help on things related to literacy. So they might go to the library, they might go to their department if they think about that as a place where you get help working on literacy ideas. They could go a lot of different places potentially. They could go to the rec center. After that, they're finding rhetorically active texts, ones they're trying to get them to do something. And then they're finding unusual texts that communicate with people, things like perhaps statues, murals, the bricks that have people's names on them. There's lots of sort of texts around campus that we don't often think about as texts. Trying to get them to collect a wide range of ideas. They'll take pictures or bring them with them if they can, but they'll come back to class with some interesting findings, hopefully. It's good to point them to some buildings if you know them, or some good landmarks if you know them, but let them go and see what they come up with. I have this down for about 30 or 40 minutes. Decide for yourself how much time you think they should have, and actually let them know what time to be back. Then you've got about 15 or 20 minutes at the end of class that you're going to want to do with them, so just count that in as you're going. Once they come back, You get them together into small groups or into medium-sized groups. I say 4 big groups, which is groups of 6. So the point here is to compare the things that they came up with and to, as a small group, decide which are the 3 most interesting viable objects of study for a research project. So they're going to compare and evaluate the value and plausibility of these objects that they found. Then you can hear that back as a whole class after about 10 minutes of them working. You can talk a bit about the process, what was easy, what was difficult about it, how much they are excited by the things they found or not. These are all ways to get them to process through a bit more what is happening to them as they lead up to the research project. Then you should go over the homework a bit. You will have a link to an online questionnaire for them to fill out over the weekend. They need to have it done by Saturday at midnight because I'm going to compile all of the answers and give them back to you as a spreadsheet so that you can actually work through it in class next time. They have as well a article project to do. They are going to go into Young Scholars in Writing, an academic journal for undergraduate research, and they have to hunt down one article and fill out an analysis worksheet that has them break down how the argument works, what kinds of evidence it uses, how that evidence seems to have been gathered, to really understand what's written there from a researcher's point of view, which will be part of the conversation for next time. So that worksheet is also on Canvas, of course. You can... Oh, one thing I will say, and I say this in the binder too, there are, I think, 15 or 16 volumes of this journal, maybe less than that. I might be misremembering. I suggest you actually break them down so they don't all just read the most recent one. So break them into groups of 5 and have group 1 do the first 2 issues and group 2 do the next 2 issues, just so to make sure that you get coverage of the whole journal and people aren't entirely reading the same things as each other. Part of the point of this is that they're going and gathering something and they're bringing it back and explaining it to others, so they have to take some real ownership of it. If everybody's reading the same thing, they won't do that quite as much. That's about it. Before next class, you're going to want to assign them into their permanent pairs for the rest of the quarter. You can do this randomly if you want. You can pair them up based on what you know about them at this point. It's up to you. But come into class next time with a list of who's paired up with whom. As well as that, I want you to pair up those pairs. So there are groups of 4 that they'll constantly work together with. These are sort of their writing groups. I call them home groups, I think, something like that. But have that prepared as well. So a list of all your students paired up, and then a list of all your students broken into 4s within those pairs. And that will be sort of their stable working group for the rest of the quarter. And that is about it. I hope that your students enjoy the scavenger hunt. I know that this is a class session with a bunch of uncertainty in it, and you can't quite tell what they're going to come up with, and you can't quite tell how to keep it stable. It will be stable. The students are going to come up with interesting things, I think. Take a look through the worksheet, make sure you understand it so you can explain it to your students, and remember that you're free to edit as makes sense to you. But if you make any big edits, you should send them around so that we can all see what you've done.